Welcome. I'm Chris Cotching, President of the Australian Principals Federation. In recent days, considerable concerns have been expressed by members of the Australian Principals Federation regarding the implementation of the 2014 or 13-14 performance management cycle. Whilst there is some acknowledgement and willingness for principals to engage in a rigorous process in relation to performance management, there are communications provided at regional briefings which are insulting to the profession, ill-conceived, and demonstrate an inordinate disconnect between the leaders of the system and the work, focus and drive of schools to improve outcomes and build communities. There has never been such a palpable disconnect so widely acknowledged in any time in our history, in our system. The responses range from anger, disbelief, despair and frustration. No principal believes that 20 to 40% of his staff are underperforming or her staff are underperforming. If this was so, then they would cease to exist as a viable organisational school. Worse, to suggest that 25 to 35% of principals are not meeting the professional requirements is absurd in a system that is the most evolved and accountable in Australia. Sadly, I have never seen principals so galvanised about their response, and I'm witnessing an escalation in their feelings across the state. Many are reporting real anguish and stress about something they know to be foolish, utterly wrong in approach, and will only act to destroy the morale of their staff and community. The impact upon student outcomes is an obvious corollary as principals, assistant principals, teachers and others choose to increasingly disengage their reserves of goodwill and positive belief. Understandably, we will be taking advice and will be providing leadership as demanded and required. We would urge the Minister, and particularly Minister Hall, to direct senior officers to revisit this approach taken. It will do absolutely nothing to improve the system, which in the main is functioning at a high level. It will create conflict and disputation in every school as this government moves with attention to the 2014 election. The lunacy of imposing new conditions mid-cycle upon people, despite the fallacy of existing policy, is an obvious shortcoming. A system that doesn't even know which data sets are to be used in the process of assessing performance is a second problem. We have foolishly dispensed with the school level report, an instrument of course that was highly indicative. The notions that principals are expected to advise regional directors before the end of November the numbers who will fail their assessment, even though the mid-cycle has just been completed, is inappropriate. It lacks integrity and is now seen cynically. The unrealistic timeline of imposing this process at the very time that schools are under the greatest demands with planning, staffing, budgeting, student reporting, and the escalation in school community functions as a normal part of the process of this year. The now cynical realisation that this is not about performance at all, but rather saving funds and imposing a quota, and yes, a quota, to assist Treasury, or worse, to suggest something about the political leadership in the lead up to this next election, is something we cannot just stand by and tolerate. I would suggest that it might be wise to engage the APF in the coming days, Minister, to salvage something of this process. The APF was not consulted about the approach to be taken, and nor do we need to be, assuming, of course, a reliance on existing policy which was well known and understood by our members. It was in this spirit that we wrote to our members on the 19th of September, encouraging them to participate in what was expressed as an approach consistent with current policy. That clearly is not the approach seen here. Therefore, we advise the Minister's Office on Monday the 14th of October that a new approach needed to be taken. At this stage, a retraction in approach has not occurred. Yesterday, the 16th of October, we advised the Secretary of the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development, Richard Bolt, and other senior officers that a resolution needed to be achieved as soon as possible. We will continue to keep you informed and urge you to make your views known within your community in order that this ill-conceived approach is promptly withdrawn. Anything less is utterly unacceptable. We look forward to engaging you in forums and meetings as we move around the state of Victoria. Thank you.